once again. Today we'll be speaking about the O'Brien Bridge, one of the first bridges to cross the southwest Miramichi River between Nelson and Derby. We'll talk a little bit about its construction and its eventual destruction and its replacement by the Morse Bridge. So our story begins in January of 1883 when our members of the legislature lobbied for the creation of a bridge across the Miramichi River. Later that same year, a call for tenders went out in order that, again, business people could apply to build this bridge. So this original call for tenders in 1883 makes a lot of reference to the already existing rail bridge that, of course, we're all familiar with today, that was actually built by Sir Sandford Fleming. So the O'Brien Bridge was supposed to be perhaps closer to the rail bridge and also designed much like it. It was supposed to be as high. The piers were supposed to take their lead from the rail bridge. Now there were 39 different bids in order to get the construction contract for the O'Brien Bridge. The highest of them was about $37,500. And the lowest was a Mr. Joseph McNaught, and he bid $16,149. Now, of course, in the listing for tenders, it did say that not necessarily the lowest or the highest would be chosen, but in this case, they did decide to choose the lowest bid. So Mr. McNaught was contacted to see if he was still interested. He claimed that he was, but before the contract could be issued, one of our local MLAs, Thomas Gillespie, interceded and said that the contract should wait because more surveying needed to be done. Now, I'm not entirely sure what happened there and why it was that that a stop was put in place. However, what does happen is basically the entire process starts all over again. So a new call for tenders is put out in 1884. This time the call for tenders is much more specific. This time the design of the bridge is laid out in much greater detail. It's supposed to begin at Bateman's Point, and now it's only going to be 1,600 feet long, whereas before it was going to be 1,800 feet long. And 8 spans, a draw span, and again, specifications for the type of iron that's going to be used, for the boards, what the boards can and cannot have, what they can be of and what they cannot be of, even right down to the coats, the number of coats of paint, the color of paint, and the signage that's supposed to be on that bridge. This time also, and perhaps very importantly, every bidder needed to put 5% down on their bid. So when they made their bid, they had to pay a certain amount of what they bid in. Now, if they weren't successful, they get that money back. But it did mean that all those bidders needed to put some money up front. On this occasion, there were only 6 bidders, so quite a few fewer than the 39 that had bid in 1883. And this time John O'Brien was successful. Now O'Brien had bid, in 1883 he had bid $22,250. On this occasion he bid only $19,000, and he was successful. Now the contract stipulated that he complete the bridge by the 1st of March 1887. And he made a deposit of $1,000 at that time. So, what we see at this point is basically O'Brien contracts the construction of the bridge and the ironwork out to Mr. Brown. He and his partners in Derby provide the timber, and construction begins. So in 1885, there's 40 to 50 men at work building the bridge. They have a cookhouse, they have a blacksmith here in Nelson at their disposal, as well as the steamer Laura that's on the water transporting ballast and other supplies as needed. By the end of September, 4 piers on the bridge are in place, and there's hope that when the river freezes up, they'll have all the piers in place, and work on the structure of the bridge can begin. The problem is, however, that originally, as I mentioned, the bridge is supposed to have a series of draw spans, so there's to allow ships to pass through. But this is eventually abandoned, and instead of building the bridge with an access point through which ships could pass, it's now built with a big bow in it, so that ships can pass underneath. This does increase the cost a great deal. But things continue on, and by January of 1887, and the spans are near completion. However, a bad storm in January does destroy several of the unfinished spans, causing damage in excess of $1,000. But by that year, of 1887, the bridge is completed, and traffic is allowed to pass this over. Now, of course, at this time we're dealing mostly with horse and wagon and horse and carriage traffic. But again, it provides a great deal of access across the Miramichi River from Nelson over to Derby, so that some of those supplies can get to market in Fredericton and other places. In 1892, as I mentioned in a previous episode of the Northumberland deal, John O'Brien gets into quite a bit of hot water over money that he received for the construction of the bridge. Now, of course, when he bid for the bridge, he was just a local businessman. By the time of the bridge's completion, and by the time other things occur, by 1890 anyway, he is a member of the legislature. And when he receives payment, he and James Robinson, who was his partner, received payment for the bridge. Following that time, they're believed to be in contempt of Parliament because of the rules of neutrality, and there's a clear conflict of interest here. Now they're eventually both fined $16,000, but they managed to get through it, I guess, because they're successful in the subsequent elections, and they retain their seats. So obviously the political scandal did not stain them too much. However, by 1912, the O'Brien Bridge was shuttered due to safety concerns. The next day, the day after the bridge was boarded up, and to prevent traffic from crossing it, 2 of the spans fell into the river. Now, originally this wooden bridge was going to be rebuilt, and it was going to be rebuilt in iron. However, that never occurred, and instead, the Morrissey Bridge, named after John Morrissey, who was involved, the supervisor of public works, was built connecting Chatham Head to Newcastle. Now, some of the older residents in Nelson claim that this was the beginning of the end for this community. Stores began to move away, began to be shuttered, now with traffic able to bypass this entire area, and set off a depression that would continue for years to come. So we end today on that note. A note that's quite a bit more somber than maybe we would have liked, but that the end of the O'Brien Bridge was, in some ways, a big turning point for the community of Nelson. Well, we'll have more stories about Nelson, Beaubears Island, and other such things in the weeks to come. We hope that you'll join us. Thank you.